and images of war. Our journey begins in Beijing. We met American aid workers making the same trip, a group granted one of the few exceptions to the US travel ban. Do you feel safe traveling to North Korea?
This is like my 50-something trip, and we all have families at home. We all want to get back to our families, so yes.
Flying here is not without risk right now. Furious over US military exercises this week, North Korea today threatened an unimaginable strike. Inside North Korea, we drive to the front line with the South, the DMZ. In this nuclear nation, there appear to be more bikes on the road than cars. Perhaps one reason so much of this country's money is spent on the military. That is the border between North and South. This side, socialism. There is where the capitalist world begins. And we're not allowed to stay here for very long. A border guard gives us a tour. We ask about President Trump, who will visit the South next month. What do you think of President Trump? He is mentally ill, the Lieutenant Colonel claims, and if there's a war, he says, we will win. We stop to talk to commuters about the growing tensions. Everywhere, we are escorted by government minders.
If U.S. Army force embark on the war, we can fight against the U.S. Army.
You're ready to fight if you need to.
Yeah.
Tonight, officials here not backing down from international condemnation of their nuclear program. North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister told us negotiation is only possible if US nuclear weapons are also on the table. A non-starter in Washington.
Donald Trump once again blurts out all options are on the table when dealing with North Korea. Some current and former members of his administration suggested certain options are not realistically available to the American president. But Trump continues to talk tough ahead of his Asia tour. Each one has an analysis of the controversial leader's latest remarks.
President Trump continued to up the pressure on North Korea through his interview with Fox Business Network that aired on Sunday. Trump said the United States is prepared for anything regarding North Korea and even made a possible allusion to military action by saying that people would be shocked to see how well prepared Washington is. And experts say this once again shows Trump's determination to up the pressure on Pyongyang, especially as he has his first presidential tour of Asian countries, including South Korea, China, and Japan in early November.
You would think that he would try to moderate the tone in order to set a good mood for his visit with the leaders in the region. But it seems as though the president is signaling that he has no intention to do that, which shows that he is determined to address this issue in the way he has committed his administration as far as the North Korean problem is concerned.
Trump also stood firm on his thoughts about China's role over Pyongyang, but this time he took a different approach. Unlike his recent comments slamming China for doing nothing to solve the issue, Trump rather softened his tone and said the Chinese President Xi Jinping is a good man and that the two leaders have an exceptional relationship. But by claiming that 93% of things going into North Korea come through China, Trump added that Beijing could do more.
Though wrapped with positive comments, Trump's words worked to pressure Xi. Trump is repeating the message that Beijing has considerable power over Pyongyang and that China must do more to solve this nuclear issue.
But with the two leaders so firm on their policies, the expert expects the struggle between the two countries to continue during their meeting next month.
North Korea. We should be talking about North
absent
Korea.
this weekend.
We should be talking about North Korea every day. There is a coming war, most likely. Richard Haas, I think you'd agree. It is more likely than not that there is a conflict, possibly a full-blown war with an emerging nuclear power.
The magnitude of the distraction can't be overstated. Last weekend, Tillerson was on just about every Sunday show defending the fact that he had not been castrated and making clear that we would continue negotiating right up until the first bomb drop, which was an amazing thing. One point on Sanders, because I want to hear Richard. President Trump, then candidate Trump, if you recall, he trashed generals throughout the campaign. He questioned them over and over again, and matter of fact said at several instances that he was smarter than all the generals.
He knew more about it than them. Yeah.
Right, so I mean, I just think she needs to go back and understand that, and I'm glad Chip Reed questioned with the aggressiveness that he did, but I think the point on North Korea is far more important.
So Richard, on North Korea, just like to hear you respond, but I'm wondering who's the lead player on what happens next with North Korea from our perspective? Is it the president?
Well, as in all these cases, it's the president and his senior lieutenants. But last Friday we were focused in on what the two former presidents said and what General Kelly was saying. I actually thought history will look back on what H.R. McMaster was saying Thursday that wasn't really reported Friday. That was big news. He basically said we are not going to accept and deter on North Korea with nuclear weapons and missiles. And other than denuclearization, which I would argue is not going to happen.
They're not going to do that.
We're not interested in arms control.
So what is the impact of that when he says basically we're not going to engage in containment of this threat? We're not going to accept it. Does that move us a step closer to war?
Absolutely, because I don't think there's any way that sanctions can kick in with whatever desired effect soon enough to get in the way of the timeline of North Korea's military advance. So I listened to the National Security Advisor, and I basically said he is setting us in a direction. This is kind of out there. We often ignore what's most obvious. I actually thought that what happened the other day moved us considerably closer to a war against North Korea.
This is what General McMaster said on Thursday, and then we'll get you in, Steve. Go ahead.
We're not out of time, but we are running out of time. We're running out of time. And so this is a problem set that we have to take on with a great sense of urgency. The president's been extremely clear on his perspective on North Korea. He is not going to accept this regime threatening the United States with a nuclear weapon. He just won't accept it. So there are those who have said, well, what about accept and deter? Well, accept and deter is unacceptable. And so this puts us in a situation where we are in a race to resolve this short of military action.
Steve?
Richard, look, I can't disagree with you. Obviously, the threat of war is real, but it seems to me war there it's just unimaginable, right? There are 250,000 Americans in South Korea. There are 20 million people in Seoul, 60 kilometers or something like that from the DMZ. It can't possibly go well. It can't possibly end well. It has to be it has to make Vietnam look like a pipsqueak compared to what would happen in the Korean Peninsula if we actually did something like that.
It would be horrific. It's not unimaginable. And I could see it either happening out of design, which is what was hinted at the other day, or out of accident. We've got B-1 bombers flying close to North Korea. We've got ships in the area. North Korea continues to shoot missiles. Any one of those scenarios could lead to action and reaction, and no one here could sit around this table and say that Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, that given everything they've said, that they could somehow manage this. You wrote the other day about JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is about as far from that kind of management of a delicate situation as you could imagine.
Sometimes you have to step back when you look at these issues, and it gets too cluttered, and you just have to look at the players. And you have to figure out what they're going to do. I believe if you step back and take a look from a distance at Donald Trump, this is a guy who has already told himself and every general around him, I will not be the person that allows North Korea to develop technology to send a nuclear weapon to the West Coast. And I think unlike other presidents, he is not limited by the fears that limited JFK or even Ronald Reagan. And by the way, when I say fears, don't flinch. I mean you have reason to be scared of a war that could wipe out 500,000 people.
No, I
in
just
a
think
couple
he
of
wants to
weeks.
use nukes. That's what I think he feels.
Well,
I
no.
totally disagree. I think that he's
You totally
a little.
disagree with
We've
what?
heard him over the past year.
Right,
he's excited about the
The
concept.
U.S. floor plans don't require the use of nuclear.
You didn't.
I know.
You didn't hear me, Mika.
I heard you.
No, you
but
didn't. No, I said he is not chained by the same fears
Right.
that chained JFK and Reagan, a fear of nuclear weapons, a fear of war, and unfortunately, I think we have to be on guard after that. Since he is so contemptuous of the Constitution that if a war does begin, you have to be very careful about what steps he takes at home domestically if he does start that war.